We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast, and this is going to be one of those email extras. Got a lot of guests coming on, a lot of news happening, and we're getting a lot of emails too. And I can't continue on without reading the emails, so I must do that. I can't fit them in the ones with the guests, so I must do an extra. So here we are with an extra. Currently, the podcast running is with Eric and Jason, which was an interesting podcast right after Joe Biden stepping aside and endorsing uh, Kamala Harris. So that's an interesting show. If you haven't heard that one yet, you must check it out. Tomorrow, we've got Abe Gurko on. He goes by Won't Be Silent on TikTok. He's been on the show a number of times, and he's an outstanding guest, so you'll want to check that out. But we got to tend to the emails too. I can't ignore the emails. Before we do that, of course, we know Joe Biden stepped aside. Kamala Harris was endorsed by Joe Biden. And then it was an absolute avalanche. Nobody expected it. The Democrats didn't expect it. The Republicans certainly didn't expect it. But she's got an unprecedented amount of support very quickly. Hell, the fundraising has been amazing too. In less than a day, at the time I'm recording this, she's collected $80 million. Plus, she gets what Joe Biden had in his bank account for his campaign. So she's way ahead of the game very quickly. The Republicans don't really know what to do with this. As I said, they didn't expect this coming. There's nothing, I enjoy watching Republicans lose, but I enjoy it much better if they lose after being blindsided. And they are blindsided here. They're saying, oh, this isn't fair. We did our convention. We were looking at Joe, and now you switch it up. That's not fair. It's unconstitutional. Well, that's not the case. That's not true. That's just more bullshit from the Republicans. We don't even officially have a nominee at this point, but it's gone a little crazy. People are coming in droves supporting Kamala Harris. Now, just minutes before I started recording this, people were saying, yeah, but what about the leadership in Congress? Are they going to support her? And that was really up for debate. They're kind of the big money people, and Kamala's not really the friend to the big money people. And there was a possibility that the leadership in Congress wouldn't support her, which wouldn't bother me because the president supports her. And after that, I don't fucking care. The president and the people support her, so I'm all in with Kamala. Well, earlier today, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Emeritus, came out and she supports Kamala Harris fully. We're supposed to be hearing from Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, too, that they are going to support her. Now, whether they were going to support her in the beginning or not, they see what I see and what you see. It's a big rock rolling down the hill. You either get out of the way and get on board or get your ass run over. And that means Pelosi, Hakeem, and Chuck Schumer. They see what's going on. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, and we need to ride this energy 3 more months to November and win this motherfucking election. Now, I always thought Joe Biden should continue to run because that was the best opportunity to beat Donald Trump. And I thought he'd beat Donald Trump handily. Now, when he stepped aside, a lot of people were upset and crying and whining. I said, just sit back. Let's see what fucking happens. Kamala gets the endorsement, and then all hell breaks loose. Now, all these people that were crying and whining are now excited, and that's the good news. We've got excitement, we've got energy, we've got support, we've got money flowing in. Let's not fuck this up. Let's just ride this train to the fucking end. That's what we've got to do. All right, let's get to the emails. We're going to talk about Kamala and all that stuff on the podcast that's up now and one that's coming up tomorrow. But let's get to the emails. Dear Mike, I think I'm going to cancel DirecTV because, for one, it's a ridiculous waste of money and it's so full of democracy destroying propaganda. I think I'm also inclined to write CNN and MSNBC to tell them how disappointed I am and they can't be trusted. I think I'm also writing to President Biden to simply say, I trust you and I believe your highest priority is to follow your conscience. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these emails came before he stepped aside. Do you believe that Trump is an existential threat to our country? I certainly do. More and more, I think Trump is the GOP's puppet, not even the other way around. I wish CNN and MSNBC would just roll the tape of all the events that they are common knowledge. How about birther bullshit. Moscow Mitch denying Obama's Supreme Court pick. How about the extreme hypocrisy and lies? Then, if you try to talk to a Trump humper, the best they got is all politicians lie. If you push back on that, they say, I don't like him, but I'm voting for him. And the one that really pisses me off is I think he's stronger than Biden. Biden is stronger and has more character in his spit than Orange Tard could ever have. Trump should have been in the vicinity of the White House. It disappoints me in my fellow humans that they are so angry and jaded that they vote for him. Our judicial system is painfully slow, but in a democracy, we the people can change that. The main thing is that there is true accountability. And when it's all said and done, for me, accountability means at the ballot box and a prison cell if appropriate. I was 50 years old when I got my first union job, and it's the best job I've ever had. Before that, I wasn't too interested in politics. So my initiation and interest came from Trump and Clinton. Trump lost me at pussy grabbing, but I couldn't look away from CNN and MSNBC. Nearly 10 years later, I have had it. I am sick to death of how they're disrespecting Biden and potentially influencing our election. In your famous words, please, motherfuckers, LOL. Well, Mike, thank you for listening. It's good for my mental health. Maybe after we win in November, your podcast can be about how we, the people, can ensure we never get in that precarious position. Power to the people. Thank you so much, Beth. Yeah, when you talk about strength, it's kind of switched now. Joe Biden was the weak old man, couldn't complete a sentence. Now the only old man in the campaign in the election is Donald Trump. Maybe we can take that media and focus on his gaffes and his bullshit and his craziness. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But when we talk about strength, if a Republican talks about strength, you got to believe Kamala's much stronger than Donald Trump ever could be. And you can see that because Donald Trump is scared to fucking death. All right. Hi, Boomer. My name is Matt. I live near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm in my early 30s, and I have been consuming your content online for some time now. I was a viewer of your TikToks initially, and I've been listening to the podcast more on my commutes to and from my office job recently. And this being the first time I've written you, I first need to thank you for all of the insight and enlightenment you bring to me during these continuously unprecedented times and where I don't know what to believe anymore. It is in my core to be a pessimist. I want to believe the things you say and your predictions about the upcoming election to be true, but I also know a lot of really stupid people who live around me. And the problem is Pennsylvania is one of the most important states to this upcoming election in 2024. I'm a queer person and I have parents who are voting Republican. I've never been honest with them about this because they're antagonistic and willing to pick a fight over things that mean less than this. And I know a lot of people either at my job or anecdotally through others who are either uniformed or uninformed and ill-informed about political issues and what is at stake in the upcoming election. And unfortunately, Pennsylvania is one of the most important swing states in November. It's partly why I say I stay here, to vote in a swing state. Instead of moving states away like I quietly planned for the past several years, something brings me satisfaction in voting in a swing state. With the most recent bombshell news of the assailant or the assassination attempt, I don't buy any of this as black and white as they are telling us. Maybe it was staged, maybe it isn't. Although it was to some extent. People in my neighborhood, which is not far from Butler, PA, are constantly being bombarded with news stories about how tragic the event was and how the man who died was a hero. Personally, I don't believe he was a hero because the only good MAGA Republican is a dead MAGA Republican. What are your suggestions for trying to get people involved from the ground level in the place where I live? And do you have any tips to find a way to survive and not lose the last bit of sanity given that we still have several more months of political ads, insane news stories, and media that is not focusing on what they should. Thank you again for all you do. Thank you for your daily podcast and TikToks. They really mean more to me than you could possibly know. You're a beacon of light in the world that keeps getting darker, and I'm getting a big head. All the best, Matt in Pittsburgh. Well, Matt, I think the answer is in front of us right now. What do we do to change the narrative? What do we do to get the energy? It's the last thing we thought would be a good thing, but Joe steps aside and Kamala is going to be the nominee for the presidential election in November. And what about Pennsylvania? Well, there's a possibility in Pennsylvania because they're looking at your governor, Shapiro, as a possible VP candidate. I don't know if that will shake out, but that will make things interesting in Pennsylvania if that happens. But over and above that, the energy, the excitement, the momentum, the rock rolling down the hill is Kamala Harris and the Democrats. You notice they're not talking about the assassination attempt anymore. All they're talking about is Kamala. All right, the next one comes from Craig. Hey, Mike, I'm writing a quick email to you about J.D. Vance's speech at the RNC. He said Biden destroyed the economy. Here's the thing. I'm earning more money at my job during Biden's presidency than I ever did under President Von Schitz-in-his-pants administration. If the Red Hats hope to win anything, they better tone that shit the fuck down because there's enough people not buying that bullshit. It's my hope that enough people aren't buying the bullshit at least. Best, Craig. Well, yeah, it's hard to deny something that's absolutely a lie. They will try to tell you the economy's bad, and I'll tell you what they do. They keep saying it and keep saying it, hoping people will believe it. And there's a certain faction of people that will believe it, but they're too small of a percentage to really matter. They can keep trying this, but they've been trying this for 4 years and it hasn't worked. So I'm not too worried about them at this point, especially with the latest turn of events. All right, the next one comes from Barry. It says, hi, Mike. Having emailed you twice, I attempted to put money where my mouth is and support your podcast. However, it seems the service provider you used to collect donations does not like my Connect credit card, despite me confirming that I'm not somehow blocked out of the U.S. transactions. By the way, in my almost 20 years at the Canadian branch of a large Coon Rapids-based company, I learned that the ultra cool people of Northern Minnie are indeed much like the Canadian neighbors. Cheers, Ray from Barrie. It's Ray, not Barrie. He's from Barrie, Canada. Terms of making donations, I'm not asking for donations. I don't expect donations. I don't need donations. I'm here to provide a service. The service, the what you pay me for me doing this service is your attention to the service. You don't have to worry about sending me money. It's not necessary. I appreciate it, but it's not necessary. Now, Ray made another post on the podcast page. She says, hi, Mike. I suspect my previous message, you read along feature, reached or will reach you, but are evidently swamped with the current RNC, surely wouldn't lighten your inbox traffic. Any effort I make an email to you, you seems like routed to Linktree, who are limiting my messages to 500 characters. Messages you are reading on the podcast seem much longer, and thus I figure there's another less restrictive way of contacting you. Please advise and keep up the good work, Ray of Barrie, Ontario. Yeah, Ray. The easy people can leave messages on the podcast page or on YouTube or whatever. Best way is to send it by email, rationalboomer@gmail.com. I'm typically reading emails, and they can go as long as they want, as people have proven out every time. So send me an email, rationalboomer@gmail.com. You can still make the comments on the podcast page, but that's the easiest way. In fact, I got one from you, Barry. Something must have happened in the translation with the technology because I couldn't understand a single word you said in it. And I know it wasn't you because obviously you're a pretty articulate guy, but that one came through so garbled I couldn't even read it. So that's where the problem is. All right. The next one says, hi, Boomer. Sorry to say this, but I think we need to accept three things. Biden is going to drop out. This isn't subsiding. The COVID is the last straw. Trump will be the nominee. He ain't having a heart attack or stroke, not soon enough anyway. There's nothing that SCOTUS won't do to help Trump. They're past the point of no return. That being said, I'm not curled up in the fucking fetal position, but I felt better a month ago. There is no choice but Kamala. Structurally and politically, I like Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro as a running mate. Solid, articulate cat and helps lock up Pennsylvania. This is fucking exhausting. Best, Garage Door Jeff. P.S. Here's a shout out to the poor bastards in Such you offended when often referred to and had the unfortunate job of trying to tell you what to do and say. What a nightmare they had to be. I was the nightmare. If it helps, they didn't enjoy it any more than you did. Probably hammered tequila shots at night before they had to give you a performance review. I got a story about a performance review. I'll tell you this. But I will say, Jeff, you wrote this before what happened last night. How you like me now? I did not predict this. I thought Kamala would be the best choice if he did step aside, and she is. I had no idea there would be this outpouring of people that were supporting Kamala. You may have been worried yesterday, but I bet you're feeling better today, Garage Door Jeff. I bet you are. I'll tell you about a performance review I had. I was doing traffic at this radio station, and I also worked for the Department of Transportation. And my boss at the Department of Transportation was a friend of mine. I knew him before he was my boss, and we were friends. And I'd always been given a lot of leeway in doing what I'm doing because I was the only one doing it, and I had some success with it. And one day he comes up to me and he says, Mike, come on in here. I go, what's up? He goes, I got to do your review. He didn't want to do it any more than I wanted to hear it. So I gave him a break and gave myself a break. He sat down and I sat across the table from him. And he says, do you have any questions before we do the review? I said, yeah, I do have a couple of questions. I said, if this is a bad review, am I going to get fired? He said, no. I said, well, if it's a good review, am I going to get a raise? He said, no. I said, well, I think we're done here, right? He looked at me kind of nonplussed. He slid the review over to me and he said, fuck you, just sign it and get out of here. So that's how I dealt with reviews. They were pointless. I've been doing the job for 25 years at that point. I've been successful at it. Why are you giving me a review, especially when nobody else does my fucking job? Anyway, we go on to Tanya from Cleveland. Boomer, I was listening to the Midas Touch yesterday, and it suddenly dawned on me that perhaps I've been way too pissed about McConnell not allowing Obama to put Garland in SCOTUS. Given his reluctance to pursue justice from the beginning of his appointment as AG, do you think he would have been even worth a shit on the Supreme Court? I think he probably would have been better suited for the Supreme Court. But whether he would side with the Republicans, I can't honestly say. I think maybe it did turn out the way it should have. Everybody thought Merrick Garland was a great jurist, but times have changed. We know a lot more about certain things, whether it be the Supreme Court and Merrick Garland. I think Merrick Garland is going to get fired after the election. I think Kamala Harris will do that. And I think that he should just go relax and retire because there's no place else for him to go. Thank you, Tanya. Next one. A lot of them are not just interested in removing the president, they're interested in removing the whole ticket. AOC says that they are warning that many of those who want president to drop out of the race also want VP Kamala Harris off the ticket, too. A lot of them are not interested in just removing the president. They're interested in removing the whole ticket. And that comes from Denise. And you're absolutely right. That was the plan. And that would have been disastrous. People of color have come out in droves to support Joe Biden. That was kind of unforeseen. And then the idea, if they skip over Kamala and bring in some white guy to do it, that's going to not disenfranchise, but going to piss off people of color, and rightfully fucking so. But Denise, now we know what happened. Joe Biden did the one thing he should have done, and nobody thought he would. He stepped aside and he endorsed Kamala Harris. And the outpouring has been absolutely incredible. So our fears are waylaid now. The big money people, the big shots in Congress, they're all caught up in this avalanche and they have no choice but to get on board. So things are looking up, Denise. All right. Hi, Mike. I had some thoughts about the RNC. How ironic that J.D. Vance's wife is the daughter of immigrants while they are signs at the convention about mass deportation. Fuck Hulk Hogan. He hasn't been irrelevant for decades now. It's been said for years that Hogan wouldn't make anyone else look good, so why is he trying with Trump? There are already people wondering if he staged the shooting on Saturday, and people ask if he used a blood capsule or bladed his ear. Having someone like Hogan doesn't help his credibility at all. That pad on his ear is ridiculous. I've seen multiple TikToks by medical professionals saying that this pad thing isn't anywhere close to how you bandage an ear. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts selling Trump branded ear bandage props to his base. This reminds me of the old wrestler cowboy Bob Orton. I remember Bob Orton. Bob Orton had a broken arm for what seemed like years. I think Trump will keep wearing the pad on his ears at events until he's either called on it or made to look foolish or until he thinks it isn't helping him anymore. Lastly, I was thinking about how he crouched before Secret Service could tackle him and how he posed before walking off under his own power. We know Trump is a narcissist. He probably had told his agents not to tackle him or force him anywhere because he thinks the image that would make him look weak. Thanks, Eric. And interestingly enough, Eric is on the podcast today that you've either probably listened to or are going to listen to. Thanks, Eric. Great to have you on the show. Great to hear from you. You always have some great input and a great perspective. All right. How about Harris Biden ticket? Joe would still be around, just not on the job 24/7. His foreign policy experience would be such a big asset to Harris presidency like it was with Obama. Just a thought. Peg. HM. Um, I heard that before. Why don't they just switch positions? And that's not going to happen. That's kind of like giving the president of the United States, one of the most successful presidents in the history of this country, giving him a demotion. Joe did the right thing. He's stepping aside. He's going to retire. He handed it off to Kamala. He endorsed Kamala. The way it worked out is absolutely perfect. Keeping Biden on the ticket wouldn't make any sense because if something happened to Kamala, I don't even know that you can do it, really. I don't know that that can be done. I suppose so, but it doesn't make any sense. You still have Joe's age as a problem. And if something happens to Kamala, well, Joe Biden is obviously a good choice for being president, but we still got the old issue. I think they're better off coming up with somebody, somebody like a Shapiro in Pennsylvania that would help them in a swing state. And that's the way it's going to go more than likely. All right. Good evening, Mike. I was just talking with a friend on the phone last night, and it had not occurred to me how little people can understand about how our government and elections work. She asked me if Joe Biden drops out, then does Donald Trump get the presidency? Oh my God, no. I explained to her that there still has to be an election and there has to be a Democratic candidate. And no, they're not going to just give the presidency to Trump. It's not like a sports event where if one team doesn't show up, they forfeit. Also tonight, heard an interview of sorts with Ronnie Jackson about the injury that Trump received. He stated that the bullet took off the top part of his ear. That can't be true because there's a very clear picture of the FBI trying to get Trump down the stairs to the armored vehicle, and you can see the top of his ear is still there. Oh, you think Ronnie Jackson is lying? My heavens, God forbid. You can tell that Trump is all about the show. I think what he did with the helmet of the fallen former fire chief was disgusting. First off, kissing his helmet in the disgusting way that he does is not honoring anyone. Plus, the fact that the uniform that he held up had the man's name spelled wrong. His actual uniform was displayed at the firehouse. Trump did not even go to the funeral, and it took him 3 to 4 days to call the widow. Joe Biden called her the very next day, and that's the kind of man he is. But she refused to talk to him because she didn't think her husband would like it. That's the kind of people the MAGA fucks are. I wonder if you haven't heard any more about why more people from Congress are saying Joe Biden should step aside. What do they know that we don't? I've always said that. What is it? I think it more had to do with money, and Joe's going into the last 4 years of his presidency, and he's ready to raise taxes on the rich and help out the middle class. And the rich people did not like that. The same friend that I was talking to made mention of the footage of Joe walking up the steps of Air Force One and how he could barely make it. He had to hang on to the rail and had to stop to rest. And oh my God, it looked like he wasn't even going to get to the top. Well, I tell you what, I'm 64 years old. I'm in pretty good health, but I hold on to the fucking rails now. And sometimes, if they're small, this is what old people do. If they're smaller steps and I feel uncomfortable, I'll kind of go sideways down so my foot isn't hanging over the edge. It sounds crazy, but try it. It's helpful. All right. Um, she stated how terribly he looked, and I reminded her he has COVID. Well, they said he wasn't feeling bad. Even if he wasn't feeling bad, he might have a little more trouble getting up a flight of stairs. It is a respiratory illness. Hell, on a good day, I might have to take a break going up a flight of stairs, and I'm a healthy and only 69 years old. Yeah, that's true. I will admit, he did look a little frail when he was coming down those steps. He had COVID. He's 81 years old. What the fuck do you want? Let's watch. Now that Joe's out of the race, now we can focus on Donald Trump and how that motherfucker walks. He walks at a 45-degree angle. He baby steps down ramps. Now let's focus on Donald Trump and see what they have to say. She wraps up the email by saying, as always, I look forward to what you know and what your takes on things. Thank you for helping us get through times that are stranger than I ever expected. I'm with you there. I keep hoping it'll get back to normal, and it keeps getting weird. Thanks for giving us a balanced view. Crazy Cat Lady Judy from Portland. And I will say this, it depends on what you call normal. If pre 2015 was normal to you, I will tell you this, we're not going to get there. Things are going to be different. We know too much. Too much has happened. It will be different after 2024 and the Democrats can take control, but I think it's going to be better. We weren't in the best possible situation in 2015. There was a lot of shit going on that we didn't know. Well, we know now. And now that we know, we can make the efforts to try to fix things. And the first step is electing Kamala Harris into the presidency, Democrats in the majority of the House and the Senate, and then we can finally fix things. However, as I've told you before, it ain't going to happen quick. They threw us down a dark, deep hole, and we got to dig out from that hole. But we won't have the chance to dig out from that hole as long as Republicans hold any sway at all. All right, the next one comes from Oliver from Massachusetts. I heard that Ron Klain, who was Biden's former chief of staff, said that he is staying in. Go, Joe, and make all two-faced Democrats your bitches. Vote blue, Oliver from Massachusetts. Yeah, I heard him say that, and I really thought that Joe would probably stay in. There was no reason for him to go out. He's up against the worst possible candidate for president in the history of this country. Yeah, he was slow, and he's not as quick as he used to be, but he could have won, and I believe he could have won. Oliver, you and I didn't see it coming, but what came was a blessing in disguise. Joe's going to step aside, but he's still president. Remember that. He's still president till January 20th. He's got the power of the pen, and guess what? The Supreme Court gave that motherfucker immunity to do anything he wants. Watch what happens right after the election up through the inauguration, November 5th to January 20th. Joe's going to have a lot of opportunity to do whatever he fucking wants. He can take the blame and the success, and it won't cause any stink on Kamala until she takes over. So watch that period of time, November 5th to January 20th. We might see some interesting motherfucking shit happening. All right. Hi, Mike. As I see it, a vote for Biden is a de facto vote for Kamala, and so be it. what if it was presented as a tag team presidency? This is something a previous emailer brought up. It's not unprecedented and a perfect solution for this problem. We get Biden's experience and statesmanships, plus Kamala's fire and prosecutorial acumen, added a healthy dose of humility for the sake of American democracy. Kamala will be the debater, thank you very much, and Joe Biden will shoulder the massive policy directions. What do you think? Steve from Minnesota. Well, as I said to the previous emailer, I understand the concept, and I don't think it's a horrible idea, but it was never going to happen. They're not going to make it a co-presidency or make Joe the vice president. Joe did the right thing. All of us thought, well, they got to do this, they got to do that. And we argued about it. The only one person in the world that knew the right thing, the best thing to do was Joe Biden. He looked at the facts. He held country over his own ego. He stepped aside. He handed it off with a fucking rocket to Kamala. So he's going to get what he wants out of this. You got to remember, Joe's been kind of truly a transitional president. He's the first one to have a black woman as a vice president. He's the first one to appoint a black woman to the Supreme Court. And now he's the first one to set up a black woman to be the president. I don't know if he was playing a game that we couldn't understand before or it just worked out this way, but it's worked out pretty well. And Joe's done a hell of a job as a president. He's shown he's a statesman, that he believes in country over himself, and he will go down in history as one of the greatest presidents in the history of this country. All right. We are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. All right, we are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. This is actually an email extra podcast. This is an addition. This is in addition to any of the other podcasts. We have Eric and Jason on today's podcast. Abe Gurko will be on the podcast for tomorrow. That's going to be a good show. And this is where I'm catching up with the emails because I made a commitment to read all the emails. So here the fuck I am. I have to put in a little overtime, but I'm retired. I got the time and I happen to like doing this, so it all works out. Let's get back to the emails. Hey, Mike, I'm a longtime listener. I truly appreciate you. I think we should start a hashtag, Don't Go Joe. And again, this is one of those that was sent prior to Joe stepping aside. We need to let everyone know just because the media is hyping the Democrat officials are calling on him to step down, the voters, us, want Joe Biden to stay in the race. He's our best chance. Fuck the media. They're actively sabotaging us, and that shall not be forgotten. Thank you for everything you do, Regina from California. I agree with you completely. Obviously, the Don't Go Joe thing isn't going to work. I thought he was the best choice to win the election. I still think he was the best choice to the election until yesterday happened. I always liked Kamala. I always thought she would be a good choice for the presidency, but I also thought I wasn't sure what her support would be, if she would be able to garner enough support. She's a black woman, and this country, in many ways, is racist and misogynistic, so I wasn't sure. Well, that changed yesterday when he endorsed Kamala Harris. He did exactly the right thing, and now she is fucking rolling. So as much as I would have liked to have Joe Biden stay in, I'm cool with the way it is now because Joe Biden's getting what he wants. He maybe wanted to stay in and be elected president. He understood the factors that were working against him. So he said, fuck it, I'm going to leave on my terms, but you better put Kamala in behind me. And a lot of people question whether or not he could even get that done after he endorsed her. But man, it just took off. $80 million collected in less than a day. We've got entire states saying, you've got our delegates, Kamala. So Joe's coming out of this looking like a fucking hero. He did the right thing at the right time, and that's been the strong point with Joe Biden. All right, the next one says, hi, Mike. Jay from California here. Let's pick a time to meet Saturday so I can go on the show and share my thoughts about NatSoc MAGA Thuglikins. Israel, that absolute mindfuck shit show on RNC, and my thoughts on the idiots on both the right and left who won't stop attacking the president. Biden, looking forward to being on the show. Love the podcast. This And Palmer Report keep me sane right now. Wikipedia calls it fake news, but it's more truthful than the so-called news in the media. All the best, Jay. And I sent Jay a note. Obviously, we had somebody on Saturday. We got somebody on tomorrow. Old Soul will be on Thursday. And I don't know who else is going to be coming on. They're coming in a flurry here. And this show is kind of changing a little bit. I had a format. I did some emails, and then I talked about some of the news. And now I've got all these guests on, which I think is better for the show. It's nice to get a interaction, a collaboration, or some different perspectives. I really enjoy it, and then we have some great people that come on the show. So I don't know how the show's going um, to morph, but it's starting to look like I got to do these extra email shows, which is fine. Hopefully you guys appreciate it or want to listen to it, but I'm going to keep doing it anyway, so it doesn't fucking matter. All right, we got some more emails. Dear Mike, I didn't hear the whole episode today, but I did catch you and Ed musing why women didn't vote for Hillary. I did vote for her, but I knew many women who couldn't stand her. First, some people hate other women. That's true. Internalized misogynist, a thing. I found this definition on Google. Internalized misogyny is when women and girls subconsciously accept sexist stereotypes and myths about themselves and act on them towards themselves or other women and girls. I know this is true, not because I'm an expert on it, but my wife talks to me about it all the time. It's a fucking thing, and it's a sad fucking thing. I mostly see internalized misogyny in the Republican Party. People feel they've gained elevated status if they stick with their men and hate on other women. It's sick and it's twisted, but it exists. Second, I vote on issues and not on gender. I would never vote for Congressman Liz Cheney, neither would I. Sell her soul to the devil, Nikki Haley, puppy killer Kristi Noem, or dipshit Sarah Huckabee, Lauren Boebert, MTG, or any of them. You and Ed don't need to scratch your heads on this. Women aren't one dimensional like that. We're thinking, rational human beings sometimes. Check on me on November 5th. Thanks, Alona. Alona's been on the show. We love Alona. She's married to Larry. Enough said about that. Larry says he wants to come back on too, and he's more than welcome to come back on. But come at your own risk. I'm a product of a German mother and a hillbilly father. My mother lived under Hitler's reign and told me many stories about it. Based on that, yes, I'm scared. However, I listen to your wise voice of reason and hope springs eternal. Siding with Biden, my hero. Keep up the good work. Susan, the little old lady from North Carolina. Well, Susan, we all support Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden has placed himself in history as one of the greats because of his actions yesterday. So now we need you to get on board with Kamala Harris. And you know what? Kamala Harris is looking at your governor as a possible VP candidate too. Ray Cooper, I think is his name. So we'll see what happens. If you were riding with Biden or siding with Biden, now you got to hop on board with Kamala because she'll continue on where Joe Biden left off. All right, this one comes from Stephanie. Good day. Hope your weekend's going well. Hold on a second. I just thought about MAGA morons, evangelicals who are spouting the notion the God deflected the bullet and is happy or is protecting Trumpy. I notice they never consider the basic fact that the other guy also has that ability. Stephanie, if God protected Donald Trump by deflecting the bullet, why didn't God just stop the guy from shooting the fucking bullet? If God had an intention, well, let's take a shot at him. Let's scare him. I don't think that's how God works. I just don't. All right, the next one says, hello, Boomer. I was never interested in any kind of social media accounts. I've hated them all. The way I feel, they only cause problems in all ways. But then one afternoon, my husband and I were winding down after dinner, watching TV, and he says to me, honey, listen to this man, which was a Boomer video, my video. I listened and I thought, okay, cool. and I was ecstatic to hear someone speaking positive about Dems and President Biden. The next evening, my husband had me listening to another one of your videos. Instantly, then I was hooked. I have my mother hooked as well. We call each other daily, and she'll ask me, "Have you heard from Boomer?" So I knew the only way to keep up with you was to create a TikTok account. I now also follow your YouTube videos and podcasts. By the way, I share your videos and podcast with mom too. Anyway, better cut this novel short as I know you have other emails to get to, but I wanted to share that on Saturday evening. I was listening to music on YouTube and the song Imagine All the People by John Lennon came on. And as I closely listened to the words, I wished more people could listen to this beautiful song. The words are so strong and meaningful. The downfall for me is like the song says, imagine. Thanks, Boomer, for all you do and keeping me hopeful. Jude, Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Well, Judy, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's, I used to show my wife the negative shit I got because I thought it was funny. They would say some horrible shit about me, and it really upset my wife. She says, "How can you deal with that? Doesn't that upset you? Why do you even want to do this anymore?" Well, those negative emails are few and far between. And then I started showing him these emails like this one. And now she gets it. I said, "Honey, there are people that don't like me, and that's going to be the case when I talk about the things I do. But there's far more people that appreciate what I'm doing, that are of the same mindset, and that is absolutely gratifying." When I started doing what I'm doing on TikTok and on the podcast, that wasn't what I was doing it for. I wasn't doing it for a pat on the back or accolades or anything like that. I mean, they're nice to get, and I got an ego like the next guy, but it was really hopefully trying to make a difference by putting information in the air, and to get the reviews and the nice words from you folks is absolutely gratifying, unexpected, and appreciated. All right, here's another one from Oliver in Massachusetts again. Mike, can you believe them Republicans are suing Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan because they allow veterans to register to vote whenever they go to the VA hospital, which is completely legal? I bet they're doing this so they can challenge it if they lose the state, with hopes to appeal it to get to the Supreme Court. So much for being pro-veterans. Oliver from Massachusetts. Yeah, that's the thing. They always say we're pro-veterans. Nobody's better for the veterans than us. But all they do is try to hurt veterans. And they do this with every group of people. They say they're the strongest supporters of those groups of people, like the police, but then they work against them. This is part and parcel as to what the Republicans are about. They tell you one thing and they do another. They've got Project 2025. And then people find out it's this egregious, draconian, dystopian piece of shit, and they go, "Oh, we have nothing to do with it." Make no mistake, they'll say they have nothing to do with it. And if you believe them and you vote for them, then they'll bring it in once they have power. That's how they do business. All right. Next one is coming from Old Soul, who'll be on the show later in the week. She says, and I got to tell you, I texted her on the day that Joe stepped aside, and this is before all this other stuff happened. She was fired up. She was fired up, but she just flew back from Texas. I said, "You were going to be on tonight. Sounds like you got a lot of shit going. You're probably tired. Let's just go on Wednesday so you can gather your thoughts, get all that's happening around you, and then we can talk." And she agreed to that. So, hey, Boomer, I was asked to say something tonight to the women, and I'll be protesting with. Of course you're protesting. I literally just wrote this on the way to the hotel. Of course, I got to share it with the Boomer Brigade. Please forgive any typos. I'm writing this in a hurry. I understand we are feeling many different emotions. Some are feelings confusion, anger, uncertainty, sadness, and fear. Some are feeling happy and excited. No matter what you're feeling, understand your feelings are valid and it's okay to embrace those feelings. Use your emotions as fuel and motivation. Looking back at our history, I recognize those who came before us fought through racism, sexism, homophobia without awareness of their legacy. They had no way of knowing the mark they'd leave on pages in history. They simply fought for a better life for their children and grandchildren. We're fortunate enough to be in this unique position of understanding we are now living history. We understand the decisions we make today will shape the future of America and the direction we will go as a people. Not only can we look in the past, but we can also look ahead knowing the future is in our hands. That is a beautiful thing. Feel your emotions. Embrace them. Look within. Grab every emotion with a tight grip and fight. Use your emotions to push and fight for the America we all deserve. An America full of hope and possibility for all of us, not just the chosen few handpicked by the elites. We deserve a living wage. We deserve an education system that allows our children to learn and grow, stretch their minds as far as their imaginations take them. We deserve the right to health care. Our children deserve clean water and full bellies. Women and girls deserve the right to their own bodies and to make the right decisions that shape the future they want, not what the government forces on them. We know what marks Republicans will leave on the passages of history. We know what their pages will say. Our pages haven't been written yet, so ask yourself, what will the future generations read from our pages? It's up to us. We decide what will be written. I can only close with a question my grandmother asked us as kids anytime we had a setback or things didn't go as planned. Yeah, that happened. So what are you going to do about it? Thanks for what you do, Boomer. Old soul. And she writes some incredible. That's how she ended up on the show. She kept writing these incredible emails. I said, shit, you should come on the show. And she comes on the show and everybody loves her. I love her. And now she's here every week, hopefully in most cases. But she has some insightful things. She's a young woman. She's in her early 40s, but she knows a lot more than a lot of motherfuckers do. And I'm looking forward to talking to her. At the time she wrote this, I'm sure she hadn't seen all that's gone on with Kamala Harris. And I'll be honest with you. When I asked Old Soul, I said, what if we put in Kamala Harris? And she said, oh, she'll never get elected. This is what Old Soul said. And it wasn't because she didn't support Kamala. She was just trying to take in all the racism and misogyny in this country. And she's afraid that the other people around this country wouldn't get behind Kamala. That's why she was saying she didn't think Kamala would win. I'm sure she's surprised by what happened. And I told her I didn't think that would be a problem. I think people would support Kamala. So the first time ever, Old Soul, I'm right, you're wrong. We'll talk about it on fucking Wednesday. All right. Don't worry. Old Soul and I are good friends. We can fuck with each other. This one's coming from Deborah. Says, hi, Mike. I'm sending this with tears and a broken heart. I'm devastated and so sad those motherfucking sons of bitches made him drop out. Every single one of those cock-sucking motherfucking spineless pieces of shit will be held accountable. All I can say is I'm voting blue no matter who, because the orange turd piece of shit and his fascist under his eye handmaid's tale motherfuckers can kiss my ass. The orange turd will never be president again. Harris 2024. Deborah. Now, Deborah had to have written this, like a lot of people wrote to me, right after Joe stepped aside. There were a lot of people upset about this. I was walking through a mall looking for a flower girl dress for my granddaughter with my wife. And when I told her this, she was upset. She got teary eyed about this. How dare they do this to Joe? How upsetting this is. Where it's a disaster. All is lost. And I know a lot of people felt that way. And I did a TikTok at the time. I said, before you get all fucking crazy, let's just sit back and see how this plays out. And I had no idea how it was going to play out. I'm not one that is bothered by change. I know what I think is right. And I thought Joe Biden was the right person to win the election in November. I still think he would have won and it would have been fine. But sometimes change, even if it seems bad, comes out good. And I think in this particular situation, it's come out better than we expected. Joe's going to be president till January 20th. He's got nothing to lose. He's got immunity from the Supreme Court. We got a solid president for the next couple of months, 3 months, 4 or 5 months, actually. And so that's a good thing. Joe did what he thought was best. And for doing that, he's becoming a hero. Then everybody worried about, but Kamala. Nobody likes Kamala. Clearly, that's not the fucking case because she fundraised $80 million in less than 24 hours. And she's got everybody around the country, including the leadership in Congress, backing her. So out of something that you perceive bad is something good. And that oftentimes is the case. That's why you can't really overreact or jump the gun. You got to stand back a little bit and say, okay, what does that mean? Now, if it's good, you ride that fucking wave. If it's bad, you figure out what do we do next? Because after Joe stepped aside, there was no reason to agonize and worry about that anymore. That was done. There's nothing we can do to change that. So we waste time worrying about what happened in that situation. We got to focus on what is next. And now it's easier to focus on what is next because we're getting a more clear strategy, a more clear map as to where we're going. Don't jump the gun. Just wait and sit back and see what's going to happen because you might be motherfucking surprised. And I think a lot of people, including me, were surprised. All right, here's another one. Well, this is a sad day. Biden has dropped out and endorsed Kamala. She has better be the candidate or the people won't turn out in overwhelming numbers. Question is, who will she pick for VP? The smart choice for the country would be Mayor Pete. Unfortunately, having a mixed race black woman heading the ticket, adding a gay man may not be the best political choice, even though he would be an excellent VP and future president. I think he would be a good choice. I think he's a great politician. I think he's a little young yet. I think what happened is Kamala wins, puts her a little higher up in the cabinet, season him, and then by 2028, he'll be the guy, one of the guys or gals that will be hot prospects in 2028 or 2032. See, now here's the difference. If Joe Biden won this election in 2024, he would be done in 2028. He could not run again. Not the case with Kamala Harris. She gets in 2024, does a great job. She can run again in 2028. So we've got a Democrat till 2032, and I'm liking that. Anyway, it goes on. I don't think she'll ask Jeffrey simply due to having non-white persons running, not to mention having him as Speaker of the House and Kamala in the big chair will be the quickest way to dismantle MAGA. I agree. You got to give Jeffrey's a little young too at this point. I mean, he's not young in age, but young in power. We need to give him a chance to be the Speaker of the House. I like Jeffries. I didn't like the fact that he was trying to push Joe Biden out, but I do like Jeffries, and I think he's a strong candidate. I've often said he's Barack Obama with a fucking stick because he's a lot tougher guy than Barack Obama. My thought of her pick for VP would be Raskin or possibly the bald-headed congressman. Sorry, can't think of his name right now. The one who is always standing up, calling out Republicans. Stephanie, you're probably talking about, was it Jared Moskowitz, maybe? I don't know that Raskin or Moskowitz would be a good choice. I mean, they're good men and they could do the job and they'd be excellent as VPs. But you got to remember when they're doing this, there's got to be something gained by having a vice president. You know, somebody like Shapiro from Pennsylvania, he's a popular governor in a swing state. That would help along the lines of winning that swing state. That would be a positive thing. Gavin Newsom, that would not be a helpful thing. I don't even know that you can have two people as president and vice president from the same state. I've heard different things about that. You can, you can't. But the fact of the matter is that Kamala's going to win California easily. Democrats always win California easily. One of the names that seems kind of the most interesting that would fit the bill, and I hate to be racial about this, but I think in order to balance it and make people who might be tending racist a little more comfortable, I think one guy who would be a good choice would be Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona. It's a swing state. He's popular. He's a white guy. He was married to Gabby Gifford, the woman, the rep that got shot. And he might be a solid choice, but I'm not saying that's the one she should pick. I'm thinking Kamala and Joe, who's going to be advising her. No question about that. are going to make the right choice. And I think it'll be a good choice. And it may not even be the obvious choice that we think. But we also thought Joe stepping aside and Kamala running was not going to be a great idea. We were wrong about that, weren't we? All right, next up. What's up, Mike? Just let me say, good to hear from Ed again, and Will is awesome, and I hope Abe comes back. Well, ask and you shall receive. Abe will be back tomorrow. Joe is going to talk to us later this week and fill everybody in on what's going on. But if it is Harris, I couldn't be more excited and ready to do this thing. We are going to win handily. She is going to crush him in any debate if he doesn't puss out. He's already trying to puss out. Furthermore, she was going to be an incredible role model, an awesome president. And if anybody has a problem with this, they are either racist or sexist. So shut the fuck up. Lester Holt is a douchebag, and he's shown that in the interview, so fuck him. Here in town, we had a meeting at our state park for rural Democrats, and it was about 50 to 60 people. I got to meet all kinds of judges and sheriffs and county people that are running, and it was so refreshing to be around so many like-minded people for once, even though the Trumplafucks tried to put their own parade together that failed with their flags and trucks, and everybody was just disgusted that I talked to. But we are here talking about Tammy Wilson beating Jordan, Joe Harris winning, how dangerous Project 2025 is, and not to mention, I was telling everybody about the Rational Boomer, so I hope I grabbed some listeners for you. Thank you very much. Can't wait to be back on again and hope all is well. P.S. Everybody out there, say what you want to say, what's on your mind. Speak in facts that have nothing nice. I have nothing nice. Dump Trump, vote blue on back of my new car, and I don't care what they think. We got this. I agree when Democrats take power, the presidency, the House, and the Senate will have a lot to fix, and they better do it 100%. Love the show. Never stop. Peace and liberty to all. And that comes from Matt. All right. Next up. Let's see here. Mike, I've never written to you, but decided today was the day since President Biden has dropped out of the race. First of all, I'm Lisa from Maryland, and I listen to your podcast every day. So, Lisa, I love you. I thank you for listening every day. During COVID, I came across your TikTok during the 2020 election. I'm a middle-aged African American woman and was so happy to come across your account. I was so disappointed today when Biden announced he was dropping out because he has been so successful, and I feel he is the only one that can defeat Trump again. I work at one of the largest hospitals in Baltimore and meet people every day from all over the world. The main issue the most of my peers had with Biden was his age and how he handled the Gaza-Israel war, and this is the reason why they would no longer support him. I still always believed he would defeat Trump. As a hospital worker and watching my parents, who are both in their 80s, age rapidly, I can understand why he's dropping out of the race. I was eating dinner with my dad when I got a text about Biden dropping out. I was in tears, and my dad explained to me that he is going out on top and is putting America first, and only he knows why he can't stay in the race. I'm assuming he may have some cognitive decline because of Parkinson's, which can rapidly turn into Alzheimer's or dementia. I think this is because he seemed fine during the State of the Union address, and several months later at the debate, he seemed like he aged so fast. I stopped watching MSNBC and CNN because they never cover any news that Trump was such a close friend and client of Epstein. Well, I will tell you this. I don't think he stepped aside because he has an illness necessarily. I mean, maybe he does, but that's not why he stepped aside. The reason he said he would step aside was if the data showed that he couldn't win. And for whatever reason, they convinced him that he couldn't win. So that is the reason he stepped aside. We haven't heard of any sicknesses that he had. And I suspect we would hear about them given that he's president of the United States, but that's up for debate. So I wouldn't put on him that he's got some debilitating disease because we don't know that's true. Joe's relatively healthy. He's old. He's slow. That's what happens when you get old. So anyway, um, I am now worried about the Democrats will not support Kamala and how they all turn their backs on President Biden but never call on Trump to drop out of the race. My sister thinks that the President Biden could pardon Hunter Biden and step down to make Kamala president if they do not support her, just so that she can become an incumbent. Qualified in my eyes and is young. I hope she debates Trump since she is a prosecutor and he is a rapist and a convicted felon. Mike, your podcast is the voice of reason. You're always right. Well, no, I'm not always right, but I try. After Kamala wins, I would love to hear more of your Prince stories. Well, not so much Prince stories, it's the Prince era in Minnesota. I didn't really know Prince per se, but I worked with a lot of his people that did. I'm a huge fan and visit Paisley Park in 2020. When my parents are not in Maryland, they are in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm hoping and praying that I never have to see Air Force One at the Palm Beach airport ever again if it's not for President Harris. Mike, keep up the great work. My favorite guests are Old Soul and Ed. Would love to come on your show one day if I'm ever brave enough. If you and your wife ever come to Maryland, I would love to meet you both of you out for a Baltimore crab. Of course, my treat. Take care. I look forward to listening to your show tomorrow. P.S. President Biden was here for us during the collapse of the Key Bridge. We thank you for that. And that comes from Lisa. And she's a medical professional at Johns Hopkins. So, Lisa, thank you very much. I would like to get to Maryland. I am going to D.C. on November 7th. I think I've said this before. Somebody wants me to come out and talk. And when I found out it was 2 days after the election, after Kamala kicks Donald Trump's ass, I would love to go to fucking Washington. And when I'm in D.C., I won't be that far from Maryland. So who knows? Maybe we can work something out. um, but anyway, Lisa, how you like us now? I know you're worried about this and wondering whether they're going to get behind Kamala. I bet you got a different take now, right? You got to be happy right now because the amount of support she got is unimaginable. It's incredible. So, Lisa, you got to be feeling better today. The support is there for Kamala, and we are going to kick Donald Trump's ass. All right. Mike, long time no talk. Hope you and the family are well. I know I've been radio silent lately, but I still been listening daily, and I want to write in today to say that I'm energized by Kamala Harris taking the torch. I'm anxiously await her VP choice. I would love to see Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, as her choice. It would give me so much joy to see MAGA lose their mind over a black woman and a Jewish man running the country. No matter who she chooses, I'm with her all the way. All the best, Fred. Now, Fred's been on the show before. It's been a long while. He's our friend from Chicago. Very bright, very has a great perspective, and we hope he comes back on again soon. So, Fred, get on that shit. Send me an email. You know how this motherfucking goes. We need to hear from you. All right. This one is another email from Judy, Crazy Cat Lady, Portland, Oregon. Love her emails. Good evening, Mike. I, like so many other people, have been glued to the news all afternoon. I first felt sad and worried, and at this point now I'm feeling hopeful and uplifted to hear that Harris has not only Joe Biden's endorsement, but at least 7 to 10 governors have given their endorsements, and several electoral delegates are also beginning to endorse her. Just my thought here, but I think they've been putting the legalities in place maybe all week to be able to hit the ground running when the announcement was made. Act Blue has raised $46.7 million for Harris's campaign. Well, it's been a while since you wrote the email. Now it's more like 80 million. So that says a fucking lot. And was this set up beforehand? Yeah, I think it was. I think this was known a while back because it really threw the Republicans in a tizzy that they announced that Joe was stepping aside after the convention, after the Republican convention. They're going after Joe. They took all this time to go after Joe and do all this stuff. And then Joe stepped aside and Kamala comes in. Do I think that was premeditated? I absolutely fucking do. And it was a brilliant move. I heard that Joe Manchin now thinks he'll register as a Dem to run against her. There are fish that flip flop less than that. Is it that he undecided about what he believes or that insecure about having a black woman in the White House. Now, he's an attention whore. He just likes to get attention. He says, well, maybe I'll run. Well, you're not even a fucking Democrat anymore. You're going to have to re-register as a Democrat because you're a fucking independent. And besides that, Democrats don't like you. Republicans certainly don't like you. You don't have a prayer. I think he mentioned that, and now he's embarrassed and he's starting to backstep on that because everybody's supporting Kamala. He knows he'd get run over by that fucking rock. Don't worry about Manchin. He's not a thing. I love that Trump's people are pissed that they have to start all over because they spent the whole convention bitching about Biden and now it's different. Boo hoo. Anxious to hear how this all plays out. I think it's going to be a rough, very fast paced campaign. Hopefully, in the rush, they don't make critical mistakes. What do you think? Who do you think her VP pick will be? Looking forward to your thoughts. Well, I think Shapiro, Mark Kelly, I think they'd be all good choices. I don't honestly know. I don't really have a take on it because there's a lot of things to consider, more things than I know. And at this point, I'm just going to trust Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the Democrats to make the right choice. Because in this particular situation, they made a choice that nobody ever thought of. Turns out it was the right choice. So I'm going to have to trust them at this point. But you're absolutely right. This has become quite a switch in energy. And let's be honest, as we're going up to the election in November, energy is the key. And when Joe was in, because all these people fighting against Joe, the energy was low. Donald Trump's energy was up, the assassination attempt and all this stuff. But the fact of the matter is the energy and the momentum is now with the Democrats and Kamala Harris. The important thing is we keep this momentum fucking going. We shove it down the Republicans' throat. We beat them in November, and then we start cleaning up the fucking mess they left behind. All right, the last email, last part of the show. Good morning, Boomer. Some thoughts on Biden's Sunday surprise. Everyone's thinking that he bowed out to the pressure, but has anyone considered the possibility that COVID affected his general health to the point where his doctor advised the stress of the campaign, not to mention leading the nation for 4 more years, would likely be fatal? Stephanie. Well, that's definitely a possibility. I don't know that his health was the issue and the reason he made this choice. I think the pressure was there. I think he saw the data that showed he couldn't win. I didn't buy that data. I don't believe it. I think Joe Biden would have won if he was going to be president, but that's neither here nor there anymore. Joe Biden isn't the candidate anymore, so we got to focus on what's good. I think with Joe, all we have to do is to praise him and thank him for the great president he's been and the hero he becomes when he did what he did. It is absolutely heroic. Now, I keep hearing the media saying, oh, it's so surprising that he stepped aside and he's such a hero and we love Joe. All these media motherfuckers were picking at his bones like vultures. I don't want to hear it. And, I said this before that all these people that stood up against Joe, they're not going to get a pass from me, even if they change their tune. And I knew they would change their tune ultimately. The fact that you did that to one of the greatest presidents in the history of this country tell me a lot about you. It's not about what's good for the country. It's about what's good for you. And if that's your fucking attitude, I don't care if you're fucking Nancy Pelosi. Get the fuck lost. And by the way, I like Nancy Pelosi for what she did during the time she was Speaker of the House. But I will just say this. Nancy Pelosi is running for reelection. She is 4 or 5 years older than Joe Biden. So if Joe Biden steps aside, maybe you should too, Nancy. Maybe you should not run in November. We don't need an 88-year-old member of the House. I've said this before. If we're going to talk about age and getting slower and all this stuff, maybe we just make a rule that anybody 70 or older has to retire from Congress. I think that's a fair bet. And I think I come from a reasonable mind. I'm 64. If I got to be a senator today, I'd have to quit after my first term. And I think that's reasonable. People slow down, minds drift, and do different things. It's not just Joe Biden. We got a lot of motherfuckers in Congress like Grassley and Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. They're in their fucking 80s. Give it a rest. Let the young people, it's their destiny, it's their future. Let them determine what is next for them. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day. And Abe Gurko coming up next tomorrow.